What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another training commentary. You guys are watching a full body A session that I did yesterday, and today we're going to be talking about injuries and how to work around injuries, and that is pertinent to the video that you guys are watching. As of the time that I'm recording this, I'm dealing with a couple injuries that are starting to affect my training. The first one being some stiffness in my mid-back, and then my right knee is also starting to feel a little tender. So with that in mind, this is a good topic for me to be talking about today. With injuries, I think it's really important to first identify the exercises that seem to be aggravating the area the most. So with my mid-back stiffness, it's actually this calf raise that you're watching me do that seems to be the main exercise that bothers it. It's really strange that this is the case. Because I do other spinal loaded exercises throughout my training week, mainly the pendulum squat and the hack squat, and those don't seem to bother the area. But for whatever reason, this particular calf raise seems to be bothering it the most. And once you've identified the exercise or exercises that bother the area the most, I think the most pertinent thing to do would be to remove those from your program and to replace those with exercises that you can do pain-free. So for example, this standing Caidin calf raise that I'm doing, I'm going to get that removed from my program for the time being and replaced with something else. I'm fortunate enough that my gym actually has a lot of calf raises, so I have a lot of choices that I could use here. But there's a bunch of different ways that I could go, but the long and short of it is that I need to get something else in place of this calf raise because that seems to be the exercise that's bothering the area the most. Now, the goal would be eventually to bring that Caidin calf raise back in. Ideally, I wouldn't get rid of that exercise permanently. I really like that exercise. It's probably my favorite calf raise that I've ever done, so I kind of want to keep that in for as long as I can. But for the time being, my body is giving me some feedback that I should probably not be doing that exercise, and it would be unwise for me to continue to do it. So when I do eventually get to the point where the injury subsides and I can get back to testing the waters with that exercise, I'm going to get back into it, working in a slightly higher rep range, maybe leaving a rep in reserve for the first couple of sessions, just to make sure that I don't really aggravate that area and make that worse when I do eventually bring that back in. Now, if you're having exercises that are maybe causing a little bit of discomfort in the area, but they're not actively making the pain worse, and maybe you don't have anything that you could replace that with, and you wanted to keep the exercise in your program, the first thing that I would look at doing would be decreasing the load on the exercise and working in a higher rep range, and then probably working in a further proximity from failure. So for example, if I wanted to keep the Caidin calf raise in, let's say that I was so hell-bent on keeping that in that I was just refusing to do something else, what I would do instead of replacing the exercise is I would reduce the weight just to reduce the overall force that the exercise is placing on the area and overall stress, and then I'd probably start working maybe at 3 or 2 reps in reserve. It seems to be the overall load that's on the exercise and the proximity that you take that exercise to failure that seem to be the two things that kind of aggravate my injuries the most, and so those would be the two things that I would scale back. But I'd strongly recommend that if you're mentally tough enough to be able to let an exercise go temporarily, knowing that you're eventually going to get that added back into your program, it really is just in your best interest to completely remove yourself from the exercises that seem to be bothering that area the most and get something else in there that you can do pain-free. My knee is kind of contrary to my back, however. My back injury is significant enough to the point where it's actually affecting my ability to train. I'm actively having to remove, in this case, only one exercise from my program, but I'm still having to remove and alter my training program in order to work around the back injury. But the knee injury isn't that significant yet. It's annoying. I can feel that the pain is there, and I can feel some clicking and popping as I'm going through my training. But up until the day that I'm recording this video, it has not actually impacted my training and impacted my ability to do anything. And so what I like to do in that instance is to get ahead of the problem and start to maybe do some preemptive work within the training. So one of the things that I would start doing in this particular instance would be placing more of an emphasis on warming up, making sure that the area is really primed and ready to go before getting into the working set. This leg press, for example, you're watching me do my working set on 6 plates. On a normal day, I would do warm-ups with 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, 4 plate, and 5 plate before I get into the 6 plate working set. And my reps would probably look somewhere along the lines of 1 plate for 6, 2 plates for 4, 2 plates for 3, maybe 3 plates for 2, and then 4 plates for 1, and 5 plates for 1. So really, really low reps in the warm-ups. And in an instance like this, I kind of like to bring those up a little bit. So maybe doing 8 to 10 reps on the first warm-up, maybe 6 to 8 reps on the second warm-up, and then kind of de-escalating those reps until I get to my final warm-up, which would still probably be a double. So just maybe spending a little bit more time on the warm-up sets, doing a couple of extra reps just to make sure that that area is really warm and ready to go. And then if I was not confident to be able to do my working set with the weight that I had written in my logbook, I would lower the weight and work on a lower total weight and work in a higher rep range. So instead of working on 6 plates, maybe I would have chosen to work on 5 plates, or maybe do like 4.5 plates for like 15 or 20 reps or something like that. It's never going to be a bad idea to work in a higher rep range and lower the weight if you're dealing with injury. As I kind of mentioned a little earlier, it seems to be, at least from what I've noticed, the weight and the load, the percentage of your 1 rep max, the higher the number that is, the more overall stress that kind of gets put on the area. So just paying attention to the way that I'm training, and if my body is giving me the signs that I shouldn't push the load on my working sets, then obviously just listening to it there and making some smart decisions. Placing real emphasis on the eccentric portion of every rep. We have some literature that kind of suggests, mainly with tendonitis and tendon-related injuries, that the eccentric lengthening seems to be the style of training that seems to actually cause some long-term change in the effects and the fibers of the tendons. So spending extra time in the eccentric portion of the reps, which is always something that I keep keep heavy on my mind. I'm very mindful of that, but especially now as we're dealing with injury. And just in general, being smart, guys. If the knee is bothering me, then not trying to take crazy PRs on my pendulum squats and my hack squats or leg presses or leg extensions. Just training smart, working around the area, which is a big thing that I'm an advocate of. I think particularly in the United States, when we kind of look at our general healthcare system, when people are dealing with injuries and they go and see a doctor, they go and see a specialist, they usually get told to stop training and not do anything. But I kind of find that may make certain areas and injuries worse, and I really think that movement is part of the recovery process. In the ideal scenario, movement is medicine, and it's going to keep you in the gym. It's going to keep blood flowing through the area, and as long as you're being smart about the way that you're training and taking some precautions, I think that training through your injuries, if you are able to, is a very important part of the rehabilitation process. And especially with someone who's an athlete. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Obviously, if you're on my channel, then you know how seriously I take bodybuilding, and it's pretty likely that you take bodybuilding that seriously as well. And if that's the case, being told to not train just because your back or your knee is sore, that may not be an option for you. So just kind of trying to find smart, creative ways to stay in the gym, still stimulate the muscle, but stimulating the muscle in a smart way so that you're not making that injury worse. I think the final thing that I'll talk about when it comes to injuries is the mental side of an injury. This has always kind of seemed to be the biggest thing that I struggle with, especially in my younger years, and with a lot of my younger clients. Anytime that they get injured, that always kind of seems to be more of a mental stress than a physical one, which is totally understandable. Obviously, to a certain extent, as weightlifters, we have maybe a higher pain tolerance. And so as long as the injury isn't really severe and crippling, I kind of find that a lot of weightlifters are able to deal with the physical pain, but it's the mental and emotional pain of not being able to train the way that we want to that seems to be the most annoying part of the process. And as I said earlier, I'm very guilty of this too, especially with prep coming right around the corner for me. You know, the timing of an injury is never going to be convenient, but it feels especially inconvenient right now with prep kind of coming around the corner. But I'm kind of trying to use this as an opportunity to kind of focus on the bigger picture. Maybe this is me being a pessimist and maybe being the bearer of bad news, but I am a firm believer. If there's one thing that I've kind of noticed over my years of training, it's that if you're not injured now, it's honestly only a matter of time until you get injured to some degree. I kind of feel like injuries are a normal part and process of all athletics and all sports. And as fucked up as it sounds, the more times that you get injured and overcome that injury and rehab everything, the more that it kind of builds resiliency and builds confidence in the way that you can get through it. So obviously I am kind of dealing with some sort of mental stressors. I'm really hoping that I can get this taken care of as soon as I can. But I know deep down that I know what I need to do in order to not make the area worse. And if the area does start to get worse, I know that I have ways that I can train through it, and I have backup plans that I can put into place to kind of work around the program. So it's ultimately just going to come down to whether or not I'm smart enough and disciplined enough to actually follow through with those if I need to. But trying to keep my head on straight with prep around the corner and not trying to let this injury bleed into the day-to-day life and kind of make things worse. As always, guys, I'm really hoping that these videos will kind of spark some degree of discussion or maybe some questions. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you are interested in coaching or a consultation or any of my other services, I have that in the description below. If you guys are training today, then train hard. If you're resting today, then rest hard. And as always, take care of yourselves.